Hello and welcome to the first story in our How to Be an African Dictator series. In the heart of Morocco, during the 17th and 18th centuries, a ruler's legend reverberated through the corridors of time. His name? Moulay Ismail ibn Sharif, a man whose ambition knew no bounds and whose power was unrivaled. Moulay Ismail wasn't just any sultan. He ruled with an iron fist, commanding loyalty from his subjects and instilling fear in his enemies. But it wasn't just his military prowess that distinguished him, it was his remarkable family life. According to the Guinness Book of Records, Sultan Moulay Ismail ibn Sharif fathered more children than any other man in recorded history. Today, we explore the captivating tale of this extraordinary African figure. Sultan Moulay Ismail's rule was like something straight out of a suspenseful novel, but with a spine-chilling twist. He wasn't just powerful, he was downright terrifying, which earned him the reputation of a ruthless dictator. Just picture the fear and unease that must have gripped every corner of his kingdom during his rule. Despite the ruthlessness of this man, let's take a moment to acknowledge his accomplishments. Over the span of Moulay Ismail's 55-year rule, he achieved remarkable deeds. During his reign, Moulay Ismail consolidated a whole new dynasty known as the Alawites. His army, known as the Black Guard, was a formidable force. When Moulay established the Black Guard, which was a professional army made up of soldier slaves, he named it the Abid al-Bukhari. Under his leadership, he used the Black Guard to expand Morocco's territories by conquering neighboring lands. As you can imagine, he utilized this super army of slaves to suppress any domestic resistance. Even more importantly, with his army, Moulay Ismail fought off the Ottomans, also known as the Turkish Empire, eventually forcing them to recognize Moroccan independence. To add to the list of military accolades, Moulay Ismail also reclaimed control of several cities that were previously held by England and Spain, bringing them back under Moroccan authority. Relying on his professional army of soldier slaves significantly reduced the Sultan's need for tribal support, who were always prone to rebellion. Sultan Moulay Ismail ibn Sharif even embarked on a massive construction project to transform the city of Meknes, one of the four imperial cities of Morocco, into a rival to Versailles, even enlisting the help of French engineers. And on the international stage, he sought alliances with powerful figures like Louis XIV of France and James II of England, boosting Morocco's standing. However, his legacy is stained by the immense cost of his achievements. Hundreds of thousands were enslaved, countless lives were lost in wars and brutal repression, with many falling victim to Ismail's cruelty. Not to mention, Morocco was eventually driven toward ruin by the ruler's obsessions. In the age of absolutism, few rulers commanded as much power and instilled as much fear as Sultan Moulay Ismail. So how did he ascend to power? When he took the throne, Morocco was fractured by internal conflicts and power struggles. However, by the time his reign ended, he had established firm control over the country. Moulay Ismail ibn Sharif was born around 1645 in Sijil Massa. Moulay Ismail ibn Sharif came from a prestigious family. His father, Sharif ibn Ali, was a leader in Tafilalt and the first ruler of the Alawi dynasty. Like others of the dynasty, Sharif ibn Ali claimed to be a descendant of Muhammad, the founder of Islam. Before Ismail ben Sharif, three rulers led the Alawi dynasty: his father, Moulay Sharif, and then his two half-brothers, Sidi Mohammed and Moulay Rashid. Moulay Sharif, the first ruler from 1631, managed to maintain Tafilalt's independence from the Dilaraya. He, however, stepped down in 1636, and his eldest son, Sidi Mohammed ibn Sharif, took over. When Sidi Mohammed ibn Sharif took over from his dad in 1636, his half-brother, Moulay Rashid, rebelled against him and succeeded in killing him on the 3rd of August, 1664, in a battle on the plain of Ongod, near Oujda. After killing his brother Muhammad in 1664, Rashid ibn Sharif set his sights on the rest of the country. Within a few years, he had conquered eastern and northern Morocco, including the important city of Fez. In 1669, he took the historic city of Marrakesh and the rest of southern Morocco. This meant that by the time he died in 1672, all of Morocco was essentially under the Alawites' control. Moulay Ismail chose to support Rashid and was rewarded by being appointed governor of Meknes. There, Moulay Ismail focused on developing the region's agriculture and commerce to boost his wealth, while Moulay Rashid ruled as Sultan of Tafilalt and later as Sultan of Morocco after conquering Fez on the 27th of May, 1664. Rashid even gave his brother Ismail military control of North Morocco and appointed him Khalifa or Viceroy of Fez in 1667, while he himself battled in the south. During Rashid ibn Sharif's rule, the Alawite dynasty's influence grew stronger and stronger, even stretching beyond Morocco, reaching into the Sahara Desert in Western Africa. Under his leadership, Morocco also conquered important cities like the legendary Timbuktu and Jen, located in present-day Mauritania and Mali. It's very important to mention that achieving all this wasn't a walk in the park for Sultan Rashid. The early part of his reign was filled with rebellions and threats from his own family. As soon as he came to the throne, he had to fight off challenges to his rule from his nephew and brothers. Sadly, tragedy struck. While Rashid was busy fighting against independent tribes in the High Atlas, he died on April 9, 1672, in Marrakesh, after falling from his horse. After Moulay Ismail learned of his brother Rashid's death on April 13, he quickly rushed to Fez. Here, he took control of his brother's treasury and declared himself Sultan of Morocco on April 14, 1672, when he was only 26 years old. When Sultan Moulay Ismail took the throne in 1672, following his half-brother's death, he had grand ambitions in mind. He aimed to strengthen his rule and expand his kingdom's influence. But the Ottoman presence in Algeria and internal threats from tribes within Morocco posed serious challenges to the kingdom during Ismail's reign. To safeguard his rule, Ismail knew he had to build a formidable force capable of countering these threats, or risk losing everything. To realize his ambitions, Sultan Moulay Ismail saw the re-establishment of slavery in his kingdom as vital. This decision was influenced by the practices of the Sadi dynasty before him. The concept of forming a militia of enslaved people began to take shape for Sultan Moulay Ismail during a visit to Marrakesh. According to a book by UNESCO titled A Africa from the 16th to the 18th century, during his time in Marrakesh, which was once a capital of the Sadi dynasty, he encountered Mohammed ibn al-Qasim al-Ilish. Mohammed ibn al-Qasim al-Ilish was a secretary of the Makhen whose father had served as secretary to Sadi ruler al-Mansur. Al-Ilish informed the Alawite Sultan about a register containing the names of slaves previously utilized as soldiers by the Sadi Sultan. Intrigued by the idea, Sultan Moulay Ismail decided to establish his own black militia, with Al-Ilish overseeing the recruitment process. Al-Ilish was tasked with identifying and enrolling the names of slaves previously utilized as soldiers, who were still many in the Marrakesh region. To help ensure that Al-Ilish's mission was a success, in the late 17th century in Morocco, Sultan Moulay Ismail issued a decree ordering officials to enslave all black individuals. The Sultan wanted all black people enslaved, whether by coercing them into slavery or by enslaving those who were free. This means that even the Haratin, who were free blacks or former slaves, would be enslaved. Those who were owned by others were purchased at a price of 10 mithqals per person, regardless of gender. Free blacks or Haratin were collected without any payment. This decree ordering the Sultan's officials to enslave all black individuals went against Islamic law, which forbids the enslavement of fellow Muslims. So as you can imagine, the Sultan's decision sparked a heated debate and hostility between Muslim scholars and Sultan Moulay Ismail. Convinced of the legitimacy of his actions, the Sultan disregarded the objections of the scholars and persisted in emphasizing the crucial necessity of a strong army to unify and defend the country. He argued that the slave ancestry of the Haratin justified his reasoning to enslave them again. After all, wasn't slavery part of their ancestry and history? The debate between Moulay Ismail and Muslim scholars in Fez continued until 1708, when he forced them, through brutality against their families, to finally endorse the Diwan ul-Abid, a registry signed by Muslim judges, notaries, and occasionally witnesses. This registry listed the names and descriptions of black slaves, as well as sometimes their lineage, including parents, children, and grandchildren who were born into slavery. These slave registers were meticulously compiled to legitimize the Sultan's campaign to acquire all black individuals for his army. Once gathered in Mashra ar-Ramla, located west of Meknes, these slaves underwent training to become soldiers, known as Bukhari soldiers. The Bukhari soldiers are today more commonly referred to as the Black Guard. The Black Guard underwent extensive training for several years and eventually took on big roles, such as tax collection and, of course, enforcing the Sultan's authority throughout the kingdom. The Sultan provided wives and food to his slave army so they would breed future soldiers. At their peak, the Black Guard had more than 150,000 men. With his army by his side, the Sultan now had everything he needed to successfully establish a centralized government authority throughout the country, a feat previously thought to be impossible. In addition to establishing a centralized government authority throughout the country, Sultan Moulay Ismail chose to move his capital city from Fez to Meknes. In Meknes, Sultan Moulay Ismail had larger-than-life dreams of transforming the city of Meknes into a magnificent imperial center. Inspired by the opulent royal palaces of France, he planned to construct architectural wonders that would immortalize his legacy as an Alawite sultan. The Sultan's intention was nothing less than to create a palace so complex that it would outshine Louis XIV's at Versailles. But pulling off such an ambitious endeavor wasn't going to be a walk in the park, and the old Sultan knew it. So to realize his grand ambitions in Meknes, he came up with yet another cunning plan. This time, he was going to enslave white Christians in his region. And so, Moulay Ismail the Bloodthirsty instructed his Barbary pirates to bring him every Christian they could capture. Many of the captured believed to have been Christian sailors taken at sea. When the pirates were sent out to capture Christians, there were possibly over 60,000 European captives in Morocco. And believe it or not, at least a fifth of these captives were put to work building Moulay Ismail's grand palace in Meknes. Some of these captives, especially the new ones, were given less demanding tasks like making mortar, sweeping streets, and working in the stables. Those who showed skill were sent to the ruins of Volubilis near Meknes to work on tasks like sawing, cutting, cementing, and breaking down marble pillars left by the Romans. All these tasks were overseen by guards, and the slaves faced the constant threat of being whipped for errors, working too slowly, or even taking brief breaks. During the day, the slaves would work on the city construction project, and at night, they were kept at the Habs Kara, or prison of Christian slaves, which was a large subterranean prison beneath the city of Meknes. At the prison of Christian slaves, they were shackled to the prison walls and forced to sleep standing up. In Meknes, these Christian slaves constructed numerous grand residences, gardens, monumental gates, mosques, and over 40 kilometers of walls. Many of these structures, including palaces, mosques, and gardens, remain standing today, contributing to Meknes' status as one of the most popular tourist attractions in North Africa. As soon as Moulay Ismail the Bloodthirsty finished one project, he'd start on another. And if he didn't like something, he would order it demolished and a new one rebuilt. Despite his ambition to build a palace that would beat Versailles, it is important to mention that Sultan Moulay Ismail maintained a close alliance with Louis XIV of France, who was also known as the Sun King. The bloodthirsty Sultan and Louis XIV were so close that the Sultan even proposed marriage to France's princess, Marie de Bourbon, but she declined. Now, let's talk a little about who Moulay Ismail was as a person. With a nickname like Bloodthirsty, Sultan Ismail wasn't known for being gentle. He could be harsh and unyielding, ruling with absolute power. But as we've already seen, his dictator-style leadership did lead to more peace and stability in Moroccan society, boosting trade and prosperity. Despite his fearsome reputation and iron-fisted rule, Moulay Ismail was described as a man of average stature, handsome in appearance, and usually dressed in white and green. Unless he was angry, then he wore yellow. Moulay Ismail's love for Islam was so profound that even his horse rides were accompanied by a slave, whose only task was to hold the holy book of Quran close enough for the Sultan to read. Moulay Ismail, tracing his lineage back to the Prophet Muhammad, justified his actions, whether cruel or kind, as being ordained by God and the Prophet. In his presence, subjects bowed with their eyes to the ground, never daring to meet the commanding gaze of the monarch. The Sultan was also well known for killing people during fits of rage. They really didn't call him the Bloodthirsty for nothing. But his most striking trait was apparently his magnetic charisma, which probably explains why he did so well with the ladies. Guess even in the 17th century, charm, mixed with a great deal of fear, was the ultimate superpower. Speaking of charm, Moulay Ismail's fascinating family life adds another layer to his story. Moulay Ismail's reign became known for its extensive imperial harem. What's a harem, you ask? In the olden times, a harem typically referred to a secluded area of a Muslim household reserved for the wives, concubines, and female servants of a polygamous man. Keeping harem was a common practice in Middle Eastern and North African cultures, especially among wealthy and powerful individuals who could afford to maintain multiple sexual partners. And for a man of his stature, our Sultan, Moulay Ismail, was quite the connoisseur of harems, if you catch my drift. His harem would put all other harems in Morocco to shame. Moulay Ismail's harem was quite actually unmatched in Morocco, dwarfing all others in its sheer size and extravagance. Sultan Moulay Ismail married for official wives, but he had more than 500 concubines. So you can picture just how massive his harem was. He demanded complete devotion from his wives and concubines, expecting unwavering loyalty and obedience at all times. Each concubine was granted a personal eunuch, a castrated male slave, as well as an odalisque, or female attendant. It's said that Moulay Ismail had a brutal punishment for those he suspected of adultery, from strangling them to cutting off their breasts and even pulling out their teeth. Whenever a tribe surrendered to Moulay Ismail, the leader of that tribe would offer his most beautiful and educated daughter to the Sultan as a gift, adding to his ever-expanding harem. With his wives and hundreds of concubines, the bloodthirsty Sultan sired an estimated 1,042 children, but the scientific community recently raised their estimate from 888. According to the Guinness Book of World Records, this is the highest number of offspring for anyone throughout history that can be verified. The emperor had a strong desire for children, specifically sons, and as you can expect, he showed the most favoritism towards his legitimate sons. Sultan Moulay Ismail's favorite wife, who held immense influence over him, was a black woman named Lala Aisha Mubaka, also known as Zana. She was sold to Moulay Ismail as a concubine. Apparently, Moulay Ismail bought her for 60 ducats. Like Wu Zetian, the first and only woman emperor of China, who started as a mere concubine, Zana wasn't going to let her humble beginnings cramp her style. Zana wasn't content with being just another concubine. She had her eye on the throne, figuratively speaking, of course, and wasn't about to let anyone stand in her way. Her path to power began when she gave birth to the Sultan's first son, Zaidan, catapulting her to the prestigious position of Queen of the Palace. Zaidan's story and her influence over Moulay Ismail were surprising. According to many, it was puzzling how she had won the Sultan's favor and had such power over him, often guiding his actions according to her will. Zaidan's influence extended throughout the kingdom, with some Moroccans even believing that her sway over the Sultan was due to magic. She was able to interfere in state politics and even influence the Sultan's policy decisions. Zana, determined to ensure her son's place as the next ruler, faced a daunting task. With Sultan Ismail fathering countless sons, she knew she had to act decisively. To secure her son's future, she resorted to cunning tactics, sowing seeds of mistrust among the ruler, his other wives, and his beloved sons. For example, a tale is told of how she even plotted against Moulay Ismail, one of Sultan Ismail's sons. According to historical records, Sultan Ismail saw potential in his son Al-Alim and appointed him as the governor of Marrakesh due to his natural leadership abilities. However, this decision sparked envy among those close to the Sultan, most especially Zana. Zana, feeling threatened by the rising influence of Sultan Ismail's son Al-Alim, conspired to undermine his position. With her son's assistance, she convinced the Sultan that Al-Alim was a traitor, jeopardizing his future succession to the throne. Moulay Al-Alim was initially removed from his position as governor of Marrakesh due to these false accusations. However, when the Sultan realized his innocence, he recalled him and appointed him as governor of Trarudant as an apology. Unfortunately, Al-Alim faced dismissal once again 3 years later. Fed up with his father's and Zaydana's treatment, Al-Alim rebelled and claimed the governorate of Marrakesh. In response, the Sultan assigned Zaydana's son with defeating his brother and taking over his position in 1706. Zaydana's influence extended even further when Zaydana's son finally captured Al-Alim. In a ruthless display of power, Sultan Moulay ordered the amputation of his son Moulay Al-Alim's hand and leg, sending a chilling message that disobedience would be met with severe punishment, even for his favored sons. Tragically, Al-Alim succumbed to his amputation injuries later on. Despite Zaydana's manipulative schemes, her son Moulay Zaydan proved to be unworthy of ruling. He displayed disrespectful behavior towards his father and often indulged in drunkenness. Eventually, Moulay Ismail took matters into his own hands and orchestrated his own son's secret murder to avoid angering Zaydana. It is rumored that the Sultan sent two beautiful young women as a gift to Moulay Zaydan, instructing them to poison him discreetly, all the while keeping the murder hidden from Zaydana to prevent her from seeking revenge. However, Zaydana, the formidable woman, eventually uncovered her husband's murder scheme, and it is said that she found a way to take her own vengeance for her son's death. The exact nature of this revenge remains a mystery, lost to history's shadows. Zaydana passed away in 1716 and was buried in the Moulay Mohammed Al-Alim mausoleum in Meknes. She left behind a sultan who outlived her by a decade. Sultan Ismail died in 1727, over 80 years old and having ruled for 55 years or so, making him the longest reigning Moroccan monarch. He apparently died from an abscess in his lower abdomen. He was buried in a mausoleum in Meknes. By the time of his death, the Black Guard, made up of slaves, had become so powerful that it overshadowed the royal family. The Black Guard controlled Ismail's sons like puppets while they ran the show behind the scenes. Slowly but surely, Morocco fragmented over time as different groups fought for power, resembling the pre-Alawite era. This continued for about 20 years until 1748, when one of Ismail's younger sons, Abdullah, ascended the throne. Moulay Ismail's reign left a significant mark on Moroccan history. Despite his accomplishments in centralizing power, expanding territory, and undertaking grand construction projects, his legacy is one of controversy. As of today, the Alawite dynasty remains in control of Morocco, with Mohammed VI serving as the reigning king. Mohammed VI, a member of the Alawi dynasty, ascended to the throne on July 23, 1999, following the death of his father, King Hassan II. Before we conclude, if there's any fascinating fact or detail we might have missed, or got wrong, please feel free to share it in the comments below so we can all learn together. Otherwise, thank you for watching, and we'll see you on the next history lesson.